Hello there, Brosur. How are you doing?
Hello, Lambert. It was pretty quiet and peace session, and I'm enjoying it so far.
Lovely. So yes, how about you explain to us what it is you do with Anbennar?
All right, probably is a good point to start would be how I actually found out about Anbennar.
Yeah?
It was in around 2019, I believe, when I found out it in a mod Steam Workshop mods for EU4. I saw that there are orcs. I started playing because I like orcs, and then I found out that orcs had zero content.
Oh,
I thought it was outrageous, and I decided to fix that by contributing something myself, and basically that's how it started.
okay. So what did you end up doing with the orcs?
Ironically, my first contribution weren't the orcs, it was national ideas for Selmodor, so literally the opposite thing.
Right.
It is a small republic of elves in the Reach.
Yeah.
But after that, I started firstly from actually creating formals for them because in original state of Anbennar, orcs were just clans until literally end game. They didn't have any formals and stuff like that. So I approached Jay and said, "Guy, I have ideas. I want to create formals for orcs." And he said, "Go on." Um, Firstly, I start from creating Grombar for Grey Orcs. Then I contributed by coming up with Hosurgan, Unguldavor, and Baromand for Green Orcs.
Okay. Those are some pretty big ones as well. I in one of my recent multiplayers, I had quite a lot of problems with Kozurgan. Uh, that tech's pretty strong. I'm not gonna lie, and I know Frozen More into Grumbar is like a fan favorite as well. That was a very highly rated mission tree. So yeah, congrats on that. I guess that's awesome.
Thank you. I also quite proud of these mission trees. How I think that considering how a lot quality of the mod overall improved, I feel like they owe a little makeover and a little more interesting mechanics to them.
Okay.
And that's actually one of the things I'm slowly working on because I was working on Grey Orc setup overhaul, which was pushed to the Bitbucket just this week.
Oh, very nice. So that's Frozen More, specifically the Grey Ox. Are there any other tags other than the two sacrificial ones, I guess, that are next to it, that are Grey Orcs, or is that specifically just for
Yeah,
Frozen More?
they are Grey Orcs, and one of the ideas behind setup revamp is to make, first of all, not the only Grey Orc tag, as well as not the only option to form Grombar Vs.
Okay.
Yeah, in most games, the new tags near Frozen Moor will be sacrificial, but as I stressed out myself, it is really possible to play them and defeat Frozen Moor.
Interesting.
Because as one thinks, these tags are starting as allies and internal friendship.
Okay.
And secondly, they also have a quite decent generals, not comparable to Brosur, but still quite decent and able to counter him on the battlefield. So there is less random for them, at least in that sense. Also, later on this week, I hope that their ideas will be contributed, so it also should make them a little bit easier to play.
Okay. Nice. That's pretty cool. I have played as Frozen More before. I had a great time with them, but yeah, if there's more options up for the Grey Ox, that's cool. So you said
Yeah,
you also did
mhm.
the what's it like Ungol'davor and Cosrigan, and what was did you do Barrowmand as well?
Yeah. But Barrowmount was reworked. I made the country itself and original mission fee, which was really small and not that interesting. It was reworked at the beginning of last year, I believe.
Okay, all right. So this is how you cut your teeth, or how you got into Anbennar and what you wanted to do. So what is it that you've been doing recently then?
Recently, I'm a bit split up. For around last 2 years, I was part of the Sahau team, and I was working on Lizard Folk
Okay.
because that's the race that I implemented, starting from the race modifiers up to their setup and their lore.
So you are the one that is responsible then for deciding that they come from space and have had so many thousand empires and or trying to get to the final one.
Except for that part. That was actually something that Jay suggested, and I really like that take. Which I then this later spinned out that they have a prophecy which is about 333 empires, and 333rd empire will be the final one,
Mm.
which will bring greatness back to Lizard Folk.
Yeah, just the next one. It's always just the next one. That's the one that'll do it.
Yeah, I won't even lie that Lizard Folk, the final empire is probably not the actually 333rd one, because Lizard Folk had so many collapses in their history that keeping accurate track of things is simply impossible.
Right. So it might not even be the 333rd. Fair enough.
Yeah, people believe that it is 333rd, and that is what important.
So looking at these lizard folk modifiers, their racial modifiers, they look kind of nice. Taking less fire and shock damage is like kind of huge in this game. So they are supposed to be very strong then on the battlefield.
Yeah, there were a lot on the defensive sides. You can also see that in pips of their units, because they have a lot of defensive pips on all stages of the game.
Right.
And they are pretty solid pick for land gameplay. Their only bad side that they don't have much in terms of damage, and also they have bonuses to fleet, which, as we know, is a very hit or miss. For some
Yeah.
decks, it is amazing. For a lot of Lizard Folk decks that are inland, it is not so great.
Right. That's true. Especially with it being
Um,
galleys as well.
yeah,
Galleys are probably not the boat that you want the bonuses on, but yeah,
yeah,
no,
and
they're
they don't have that many inland seas, so
yeah, true. I mean, you could probably fight with Fatnavossi. That's probably a thing, but they have they're pretty good themselves. So I heard that you were also very much involved with the recent Cannor trade rework.
yeah.
What was it that you
Basically,
did
I
up
was
there?
making it, and the balance were saying if it is good or not. Um,
Right.
so it started basically with another discussion that Cannot trade is not very great. So I talked with Stoffendal, and we came up with a proposal of what issues we see with it, and what we want to change.
Right.
Um, Originally, it started with Jorgas, the Gerudia lead, proposing to implement a new trade node to Gerudia. There was supposed to be a new trade node which would encompass Gerudian frontier, but as you can see, it didn't make it in the final version because the concept had a lot of changes, and I will try to explain why.
Yeah.
So these proposals were supposed to be initially just about adding new trade node, but the discussion started, and a lot of frustration with the Cannor trade setup came up. And so I was initiative enough to craft a proposal, which I shared inside the team. It looks promising, so Armon and Jay greenlit it for me to continue to work on that.
Okay.
But I started to implement it, and I quickly realized that there are a few things about trades that I didn't realize and or underestimated when I created this proposal.
Right. So what was it that you
Um,
had, I guess, missed out on or misunderstood, or what was it that went wrong with it?
all right, the first thing is I didn't think to change these four trade nodes that much. I wanted to just change the borders of it to align with one of the ideas behind Rework, because one of the ideas was that every state should belong only to one trade node.
Right.
There shouldn't be any states that are split up between several trade nodes, because it firstly looks ugly and it
Yes.
is also very counterintuitive.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Um, so what I wanted is to make halfling life a little better. I wanted to useful not just feed everyone around it.
Yeah.
So the proposal was figuring reverting trade connection between Westpod and Dragon Coast for them to flow inside Visfo.
Right.
The issue was that I underestimated how powerful caravan power was, because Visfo started to literally rob these two nodes of their trade, and they are not really that wealthy of trade nodes as on their own.
Right.
And Visfo itself was a little bit still not that great. So because in this fall, there were no literally tags that would claim it for themselves, because most of the territory there is either Laurent or Gavet.
Right. True.
So one of the suggestions which was proposed by Schwendigo, and I took up on it, was to include BPIC inside this new trade node. And I think it was a really good solution, because BPEC basically mans these nodes for halving, making it to hold at least some value.
Yes.
And as you can see how small country is doing in this dev multiplayer, it is a really good node now.
Yes. I've noticed that in my own games as well with the new system. They do incredibly well with their trade. Small country is a good pick nowadays.
Yeah, it is good because I wanted to improve halfling gameplay at least a little.
I think that
um,
worked.
but one of the reasons why BPEC was also included in the Visfo trade node, and it was remade into BPEC trade node, is because we needed to do something about Dameshead. Dameshead
Hmm.
was a terrible trade node. It had 3 trade republics which were pulling trade from everywhere in Cannor and in the world later. Um, it was ridiculously wealthy, and it was able. The only trade node which was able to compete with them was Gulf of Rahen, and it
Yeah.
still was meaning that Dameshead was doing something wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that.
So
It was absurd.
So the main idea, one of the ideas was that all these trade republics should go their separate trade nodes,
Mhm.
because even 2 trade republics in a single node, it is too much.
Right.
Because with their trade efficiency and trade power, they will literally drain everything around them. So that led to Dameshead turning into BPEC, Vetesk, and Dames Crown.
Okay. Yeah. What was the thought process behind having Bepec and Vertesk flow into Dame's Crown rather than them all flowing into Anbenkost separately?
The idea was the proposals that Tor offered to me, and which was a basic idea behind the whole trade rework. There should be, there were a lot of proposals. A lot of people wanted, and me included, wanted to have 2 or 3 end nodes instead of one Dameshead. Um, but Tor proposed something interesting. I picked it up, and we ended up implementing because it turned out working very well. And the idea was having just one end node, but make it surrounded by 3 very strong nodes. That led to our current system where there is an Anbennar cost node, which is strong,
Yeah.
but it is surrounded by even stronger nodes of Aberfield, Bay of Vines, and Dame's Crown. Dame's Crown is not as strong as other two in terms of provinces and trade power, but it has Dame's Crown, so it kind of compensates.
Right. And yeah, I've noticed that in my own games as well. Anben cost is obviously it's the only end node there, but it's not as wealthy as say BPEC in our game or even as Dame's Crown. So I think from a balance perspective and making it so that the end node isn't the best node in the region is like that works. So yeah, good job on that. You have my seal of approval at least.
Yeah, I ran around 10 tests on my own, and the idea behind these tests was to let I play in their game and see who will actually spawn uh, global trade. Yeah.
Right. And
Um,
with it being AI only, which one ends up doing it most of the time?
the thing is, and what was my goal, that it is a very mixed result. The most common ones were Aberfield and Bay of Vines.
Okay.
But Aberfield turned out to be very much hit or miss. If Aberfield's doing great, it is guaranteed to spawn global trade. If Aberfield ends up dying to Bucelar, for example, or not taking Heterata and Akasik, it probably will not spawn it.
Right.
The most guaranteed one is Bay of Vines, because obviously Laurent goes into colony one of the first,
Yeah.
as well as Vineo, and they pull a lot of colonial trade. And if there is no strong contender in Divenhow, Gate, and Aberfield to steer this trade from them, they are almost guaranteed to spawn world trade.
Okay.
Admin cost also can spawn world trade, but for that they obviously need to make something about Laurent and Aberfield.
Okay. So yeah, has the trade rework gone down well with others as well? Like I know for myself, I really think it's a huge improvement. But has there been backlash, people not liking it, or has it just been universally approved and enjoyed by people?
Uh, I will not lie, it was not. Because trade system in EU4 sucks.
I agree.
I probably will not surprise anyone when I say that. I worked on the system a lot in these months when Cannor Trade Rework came out, and I will say it with my full heart. It is a terrible system. It shouldn't be repeated in any other game.
I I am 100% in agreement with that. I'm not a fan of E4's trade, which is I mean it's pretty nice timing because I know that next week on Wednesday trade is going to be the main topic of the next Tinto talks for EU5 dev diaries. So we're going to learn
Project
about
Caesar, you mean?
yeah, well, sorry, yes. Totally not EU5. Totally Project Caesar. Yes, yes, yes. But yeah, they're going to talk about trade in the next one, so we'll see. I don't think they're going to repeat the same mistakes, but we'll wait and see what exactly we're getting.
Yeah, but to elaborate on why I think like that, firstly, the obvious reason is that it is static system. It
Yeah,
is absolutely not prone to change. The nodes that are feeding someone else, they will never become good.
yeah,
And the nodes that are getting a lot of trade, even if they're doing terribly, they will still be somewhat decent. There is no other option.
yeah. I I,
Um,
I agree with that fully.
Another thing is that because of that, there is a lot of conflicts between lore and trade, because trade doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
Because of that, I had to make a lot of, how to say it, um, I had to cope with some things that do not make sense to make trade rework work.
Yeah,
one of the things that caused a lot of arguments was BPEC, because BPEC trade node mostly belongs to Laurent and Gaved at the game start, but eventually it becomes independent small country in lore. And so there is a conflict. Should it feed into Laurent and Gaved because they used to own it and thus make it again a terrible trade node? Or should it be made into a decent node but make it not really easy, not that profitable in terms of trade for Gaved and Laurent? Because if I kept one of the trade connections, for example, between BPEC and Vertex or BPEC and Bay of Vines, it would make an unfair situation where only one of the two, between Laurent and Gavet, was benefiting from controlling small countries. So it wasn't really an option for me because I didn't want to create such a situation.
Right.
So I decided to make everyone big unhappy and make it not flow into anywhere but content cost. So to benefit from small country, Gavet and Laurent have to go into the Empire and into Anbennar coast.
Right. Well, I mean, Big Pick now flows into Dame's Crown.
Yeah, true. So maybe it is a little bit better for Gavet because they need to conquer Dame's Crown, which is smaller, but it is in the Empire and it is fighting Dame's Crown. So it is still not exactly an easy thing to do.
True. Okay. Yeah. My own problems with trade is obviously there is the static nature of it, but also it's a zero sum game. When trade really shouldn't be. Trade is basically theft. If there is, have you been keeping up with the Tinto talks at all?
Yeah, I was reading them, and also I was watching your videos to be up to date on what Johan is talking about
Yeah.
besides Dev Diaries.
What
Um,
is your hope for trade? And how do you imagine that is going to impact a an Anbennar EU5 or sorry, Project Cezanbennar?
so my main really hope is that this system will be much more dynamics it is in than it is in EU4. Maybe it will be something between EU4 and Victoria 3. Like there are local markets which are changing, maybe growing bigger, maybe growing smaller with the time, as trade becomes more and more global. Because global trade is just an institution in EU4. You don't see, except for money increasing in Europe,
Yeah.
how it affects the world.
Yeah.
I hope that it will be portrayed more adequately than just these European trade nodes getting fatter. I hope that something besides Europe can grow on trade.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Um, I have been asked by Riverdoge, um, to ask you about Thor's Tome, which I think is your gacha doodad.
Yeah, it is my gacha doodad. Yeah, it was. I literally won it before the end of last session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, River Dodge, I already pressed it, and I say I'm really happy that I won it.
What do you
Um,
get? Oh, I see
just
what you get. Oh boy,
yes,
that's quite nice.
yes. To explain, I randomly got 10 artillery compatibility and half of artillery fire, 0.5.
That's quite strong. Getting an extra half of fire pip is yeah, no, that's quite
It is big.
nice. Yeah. Um, is there anything you would like to shout out or point people in the direction of before I let you get on with your lizard maxing?
Um, yeah, I wanted to mention that in the upcoming update, which is coming very soon, there should be some content for orcs that I already mentioned. You can check it out on Big Bucket and in Steam update, which will be coming soon. And I didn't forget also about Lizard Folk. They are currently on lockdown, but I am preparing something that will make them more interesting to play. Namely, it is estate privileges.
Okay.
They will have unique estate privileges, which will be falling into two kinds. One of them is internal conflicts privileges, which will be meant to debuff and create some interesting narrative for big coastal tags. It is Kashir, Karask, Kugra, Najni, and Yasa Shalazar with Shangra. And there will be also another type, which is probably more interesting because it is mutation estate privileges.
Interesting. So,
Yeah.
so your lizards are
Lizard folk,
mutating.
yeah, lizard folks are a race which is very prone to mutation, and currently it is only portrayed with national ideas. I meant
Right.
to make it as a bunch of estate privileges, which each fall under one of four existing estates. And they will provide you various buffs and debuffs based on them.
All right. That sounds pretty cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming to chat with me. Very interesting bit of knowledge that you've imparted. Um, and yeah, good luck with the rest of your game.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Awesome. All right. I will let you go then. So yeah, that was Brosur, and yeah, I really enjoy everything that was done with the trade in Cannor. I think it's made Cannor a much more interesting place to play. Big fan of that. And lizards. Everyone likes lizards and orcs. Half of the people like orcs. But yeah, no, awesome stuff.